One of the main reasons why I got involved is because of the climate, and it's because of climate action. We need to take action now. It is becoming too detrimental for us to keep.
This is the first in series of interviews with candidates from two Barrie ridings. Today, I have with me the NDP candidate from Barrie Innisfil, Aleesha Gostkowski. Thank you so much, Aleesha, for your time and joining me today.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I appreciate the chance to get to know you and to get to know your base here, your viewers. So thank you so much.
As we all know, recently in Canada, hundreds of unmarked graves have been found near a former residential school in British Columbia. Till date, more than 3,000 graves have been found. It is a reminder of the shameful and horrific colonial past. During a debate organized by Simcoe County Greenbelt Coalition, in which the Conservative candidate and incumbent John Bassard said he was not aware of the impact of the residential school, and his mother, who is 74, she was also not aware. You are 24, you are the youngest candidate, and in response to John, you said, if John wasn't aware or anybody else wasn't aware, they were not paying any attention to what Indigenous people have been saying all these years. So when did you come to know about the Canada's brutal history, and how did that impact you as a person and now as a political candidate?
Absolutely. So, I mean, I learned about these things in history class, just like most of us did, kind of the whitewashed westernized version. But I do remember very specifically in high school, I was in a course, the teacher was Mr. Gainick, and he was teaching us about residential schools, and he showed us a movie that was done like by Indigenous peoples for Indigenous peoples from their perspective on residential schools. And I remember that resonated with me, and that hit me hard. And from there, I made it my mission, especially in post-secondary university, to learn as much as I can about Indigenous peoples, about our relationship to Indigenous peoples as settlers. I actually took a service learning course, an experiential learning course in my second or third year at Lakehead. It was a course put on by Dr. Gary Plume, and it was a 2-week hiking, biking, canoeing course where we traveled the old fur trade routes, and we learned about settler Indigenous relations in Huronia region, Simcoe County. Every day we went on a new adventure. We would bike somewhere, we would hike somewhere, or we would go on a canoe. And every day we had a new teacher as well. So sometimes it was an Indigenous elder that would come and give us a teaching. Other times it was a community member that would give us a teaching, and other times it was a faculty member from the Indigenous department at Lakehead that would give us a teaching and teach us about, what we were learning and what that meant. It wasn't just about regurgitating this information for a test. It was about literally putting this information into our day-to-day lives and learning and doing better. And from that day, every time that I go out and I smell a certain smell or I hear a certain sound, I'm reminded of that day. I'm reminded of those trips that we took. I'm reminded of the knowledge that I learned, and I'm very thankful every day for the opportunity to do that. I think that it's important that we as settlers take this time to listen to Indigenous peoples, and that's why I made the comment that I did. Because if we did listen to Indigenous peoples, we would have known a long time ago that these horrors were happening and these atrocities were happening in our backyards and our day-to-day lives. So I think that it's really important that we take this time now, if not before, to listen, to learn, and to do better. And that's what I try to do.
So have you been in contact with Indigenous residents and voters in your riding?
I've been in contact with my Indigenous friends and family in the riding. As for more contacts, I'm always making myself available. I'm always trying to be in contact with folks. I've tried to send a few emails to the Barrie Native Friendship Center. I will definitely be sending more emails and trying to get in contact a bit more as well. Otherwise, I am going to actually the Ethnic Mosaic Alliance in Simcoe County is putting on a great event tomorrow evening. It's a social distanced event in your cars where we're going to be watching Bollywood features. So that's something else that I'm going to be taking a part of. And I know that they've been doing a lot of work with Indigenous communities as well. So I'm going to take that opportunity to build connections as well. And I built a lot of connections last summer as well, doing Black Lives Matter rallies. A lot of Indigenous peoples came out to that because, showing solidarity and working together. So that's been something that I've been really proud to be a part of and to help out with and to chat with folks and get to know people in the area.
When you talk to Indigenous people, what are the most important issues for them?
Absolutely. So what I've been hearing a lot is environmental concerns, housing, clean drinking water. The concerns that most of us have. Indigenous peoples are best placed to, take care of the environment, to take care of the land that they have, because this is their land. So we need to take that into consideration, and we need to start respecting Indigenous peoples and respecting their land. And we need to start listening. So my goal is to listen and to do as best as I can in terms of, listening to the concerns of people in my community while also taking action and being an ally as best I can as a settler.
I'm not sure if you know that recently Greta Thunberg and other three climate activists from Mexico, Kenya, and Bangladesh wrote an opinion piece in New York Times titled, Is This the World Being Left to Us by Adults? The younger generation, especially and including those are below 18, have started a big movement to address climate change. How important is this climate change issue for you? And what is the NDP plan to tackle climate change?
Absolutely. So, I mean, one of the main reasons why I got involved is because of the climate, and it's because of climate action. We need to take action now. It is becoming too detrimental for us to keep waiting and keep denying that climate change is real. I'm glad that all of the candidates here are in agreement that climate change is real, but what is the action? What are we going to do? The NDP, our plan has been stated as one of the boldest and most innovative climate action plans out there. We have really been trying to step it up, especially because unfortunately there aren't Green Party candidates in Barrie, Springwater, Oromadonte, or Barrie Innisfil. So us as NDP candidates in both these ridings are really trying to step up and really trying to push that climate agenda because we need that. We need climate action. And as a young person, as somebody who unfortunately hasn't been represented in politics as much as I would hope, I feel like it's important for me to speak up for young people as a young person because this is the world that I'm living in. This is the world that my family, my future generations are going to be living in, and I want to do better. We need to do better now. It's not about talk; it's about action, and that's why I think that it's important for young people, young inspired people, to get involved. We don't need more cynical politics. We don't need more of this. Where's the money going to come from? What about this and that and the other thing? We need to do things. We need to do and take action. Yes, of course, the money is important. The budget is important, but we're not going to have any money. We're not going to have a budget if our world is up in flames. So we need to take that into consideration and we need to do what's right for our environment at any cost.
Talking about the environment, Simcoe Lake cleanup has been delayed for a long time, and there is no environmental assessment for the proposed highway, for the proposed bypass. So, what is your opinion, and what is the NDP plan to address those issues?
Yeah, so like I said at the debate, and I actually got cut off during the debate when I was trying to announce this, so I think that this would be a good opportunity now. So myself and the Simcoe County NDP candidates have announced that there's been preliminary correspondence between us, and this is our plan going forward. We want to create a Lake Simcoe NDP coalition. These 7 ridings represent a little over 2% of the House of Commons, but we share a number of common interests, including but not limited to the health of the lake from which we source our drinking water, a heavy rural population, and a disproportionate impact of climate change compared to ridings centered on more urbanized areas. 2% of Parliament might not sound like much, but a unified voting bloc of MPs has much more power in Parliament than an individual, and the 7 chapters' combined resources can function much more efficiently when angled together rather than apart. So our plan is to work together for the health of Lake Simcoe and for the health of our communities. It's really important that we take this into consideration, and I know that if elected, first and foremost, I will be putting as much time, as much energy, and as much funding as I can into Lake Simcoe and into cleaning up Lake Simcoe. And also, in all proposed development plans, I will be considering the health of our lake, the health of our ecosystems, and also the amount of green space that we're taking away. I don't know how many of the viewers here are in the Innisfil area, but I grew up in Alcona, and I remember because of all the development that we've been seeing, So many wild animals are being displaced into our own backyards that my friends have had bears in their backyards so many times, and it's scary, especially if you have small animals. Like my parents have small dogs. I've got a dog, and I think that it's really important that we consider that. Yeah, animals are coming into our backyards, but why are they coming into our backyards? It's because we're taking away their green space, we're taking away their forests, we're taking away the places that they live. So we do need to take into consideration the amount of green space that we're taking away, and leaving more. And if we're not leaving enough, then we need to create more green space. We need to create more forests. We need to protect those areas because forests and water are very important. Trees and water literally keep us alive. So we need to keep those two things very important and very up on our priority list. And that's something that I know myself and the other NDP candidates across Simcoe County will be considering. Regarding the highway bypass, I said my piece at the debate, but I definitely don't think that it will really benefit anybody. And we do need to have a federal environmental assessment on this project if it wants to go forward. I don't understand why there hasn't been one. There really should be. We need to assess the environmental impact on this project. And again, climate leaders don't build highways. We need to do better.
Before the federal campaign started, a survey by Navigator found out that 27% of Canadians identified pandemic as the most important issue facing Canada today. When we are talking about the pandemic, we are talking about the healthcare and long-term care crisis. Thousands of people in long-term care died across Canada. In Roberta Place in Barrie, more than 60 residents died. So what is the NDP plan to address these issues and make sure that it won't happen again in the future?
I think that healthcare is a top priority. I think that taking the profit out of long-term care is something that we really need to do. The tragedy at Roberta Place is absolutely disgusting. We cannot let something like that happen again. My grandmother lives in long-term care. She lives at Mill Creek Care Center, and I've unfortunately seen what the cuts have done to her level of care. The PSWs and nurses and doctors that work there are incredible, but they are overworked, they are tired, and they are pushing so hard, and they need more support, and we need to give them more support. So again, the NDP's plan is to do better. We've been pushing Trudeau this entire time to give people more money. We doubled the CRB and the CERB. We got it from $1,000 to $2,000 a month, and we were the ones that kept it going. We're fighting for you. We're fighting for the people during the pandemic. And we don't think that the working class and that the middle class should have to pay for the pandemic recovery. The billionaires and corporations who profited from the pandemic should be the ones who are paying. Canadian billionaire wealth went up by 78 billion since March 2020, and nearly 100,000 Canadian women have completely left the workforce. We need to take care of our people. We need to take care of our workers. We need to take care of our community, and we need to do better. So the NDP's plan is to do better. It is to take care of our workers. It is to take care of our people. And it is to make sure that people can transition back into a job or back into safety once this pandemic is over. But first and foremost, we do need to address the issues in healthcare, and we do need to address the issues of burnout in our healthcare system, and we need to address the funding. If we're calling our nurses and our frontline workers our heroes, but yet we're seeing cuts to funding left, right, and center. This is where the federal government needs to step in, and we need to, do something about what's going on here because we need to do better.
There is a serious crisis when it comes to affordable housing in Barrie. I'm looking for rental spaces, and even basement apartment have dozens of applications. So what is the solution you and your party is offering when it comes to a housing crisis?
I completely agree with you. We are in a housing crisis right now, especially with skyrocketing prices of buying houses and renting. I'm renting right now, and I'm in a short-term rental because I couldn't find anything that I could afford long-term. And right now, I am basically just waiting until I can find something long-term that I can afford, and figuring that out. And I don't think that it's fair that people are living month to month and people are living in this level of fear. I've seen bidding wars in Aurelia and in Barrie on rental prices, and I think that it's absolutely ridiculous that we're seeing this happen. And we're seeing rich families paying like months and months of rent in advance, and it's just absolutely disgusting. And we need to really take into consideration Foreign investors and billionaire investors that are buying up these properties aren't creating affordable housing. Landlords aren't creating affordable housing. They're actually contributing to the problem. And B, the housing market is at an all-time high right now with no signs of crashing. So we need to create federal incentives, and we need to create cuts or not cuts, sorry, we need to create incentives for people to be able to buy homes. And we need to cut from the big billionaires and take cuts from them who are buying up all of these properties. If you want to own property, you want to own all of these properties, then you need to pay the right amount of taxes. And also, New Democrats believe that we should be putting a cap on the amount of properties that somebody can own. And we should be, taking away from foreign investors that are buying up all of our properties, and if anything, putting a cap on them and taking that away. So right now, New Democrats believe that it's time to help people. And we don't think that finding a good, affordable place to live should be like winning the lottery. It's time to relieve that stress and worry that people feel by choosing to make it easier to rent and buy a home. So a major part of our long-term solution is to ensure that more affordable rental units are built across the country. 1 in 3 Canadians is a renter, and in many cities, what few affordable apartments there are get snapped up quickly, and people end up living in either inadequate housing or simply forced to spend a huge chunk of their income on rent, and that's not okay. So we want to create at least 500,000 units of quality affordable housing in the next 10 years, with half of that done within 5 years. And this will be achieved with the right mix of effective measures that work in partnership with provinces and municipalities to build capacity for social, community, and affordable housing providers to provide rental support for co-ops and meet environmental energy efficiency goals. This plan will create thousands of jobs in communities all across the country, jumpstarting economic recovery and helping Canadians get the affordable housing that they need. So we need to do this by ensuring that we're, of course, taxing the ultra wealthy. And we also plan to spur the construction of affordable homes by waiving the federal portion of the GST HST on the construction of new affordable rental units, a simple change that will help get new units built faster and make them affordable for long term. It's not okay that people are struggling to find a place to live. Shelter is a basic human right, and we need to ensure that everybody has access to that.
Now we are talking about the housing crisis. So what can be done to address the homelessness?
So something that I've personally been looking into, and something that I would love to bring forward, and something that I know that the NDP holds as a value as well, is looking at places like Fred Victor, for example. Their method is housing first. And I think that that is something really important that we need to look into. Housing first. We need to build affordable units of housing, or create and make the housing that we already have affordable for people to live in. And that being said, transitioning people, homeless people, into housing, giving them shelter, and then from there working on, okay, how do we get them a job? How do we get them food? How do we get them water? All of those things. So first and foremost, we need to make sure that everybody's off the streets in affordable housing, in a place that is safe, that they can call home, not something that is infested with rats, something that is not upkept. Quality, affordable housing, somewhere safe to stay. And then from there, we can move forward with food, water, everything else, the basic necessities. And then we can look at jobs, and we can look at sustaining that long term. So that's why I've been looking at Fred Victor's model. They are an incredible not-for-profit organization in Toronto. And I hope that with my work in my master's program on food insecurity, poverty, and housing, I can bring models like that forward to Barrie, Innisfil as well.
In recent years, Barrie has seen a sharp increase in the opioid overdose and many deaths because of that. So what is the solution in order to deal with the opioid crisis and the drug crisis?
So one of the big things that I'm seeing right now that we're having conversations about is safe consumption sites. We need more of those, absolutely. First and foremost, we need safe consumption sites. Safe consumption sites save lives. People are dying, and we need to take that into consideration. Secondly, I think that we should take after Portugal and Oregon and other models right now that are decriminalizing drugs. We need to decriminalize drugs. We need to take the power away from the gangs, the power away from the drug dealers that are preying on vulnerable drug users, and we need to give that power back to the people. So that's one of the most important things that the NDP wants to do, and that I want to do, is decriminalize drugs. And create safe places. That being said, also our plan regarding healthcare and pharmacare will also encompass help for people with addictions and mental health in our affordable healthcare system. We need to make addictions counseling, mental health, help for people with addictions, pharmacare as a part of our healthcare system at large. It needs to be free, it needs to be all encompassing, and it needs to be accessible. So that is first and foremost what we want to do.
When it comes to safe injection sites, there is a lot of opposition from the community that residents don't want these sites near their homes. So how would you convince people to let these sites operate in their area?
I think that what people really need to think about and what we need to realize is that, okay, safe consumption sites save lives. Would you rather have people dying on the street in front of your home? Like, unfortunately, when I was living in Hamilton, I lived across the street from a very prominent park. People were dying in that park. When I hosted a Black Lives Matter rally at Sunnydale Park in Barrie, that morning we found out that somebody had died in that park. A park where people bring their children, a place where people play, a place where people go for walks. People are dying in our public parks, in our public areas, places where children play already. So, what we need to take into consideration is that safe consumption sites, you're not necessarily really going to know what it's there for unless you're using it. It's going to look like any medical building. People go in, they use their drugs, they get the help that they need, they can get counseling, they can be, helped and watched over. There are nurses, there are doctors there. And then when they're done, they can leave quietly, exit, and go and enjoy the rest of their day or whatever it is that they need to do. It's not going to be, this weird post-apocalyptic thing that people think that it's going to be, of like, all of these addicts just walking in and being in the schoolyards and stuff. Like, we're not proposing to put a safe consumption site in the schoolyard. We're proposing to put safe consumption sites in accessible areas in the community that people can get to, because if they're not accessible, then people aren't going to use them. And that's something else that we need to consider too. We need to make these safe consumption sites accessible. So yes, I do understand the sentiment of not wanting a safe consumption site across the street from your home. I understand the sentiment of wanting to shelter your children from that and not have them see the horrors and the truth of the opioid crisis. But at the same time, we do need to consider that safe consumption sites are saving lives, and having a safe consumption site could save your child from seeing a dead person on the street, like, to put it very plain and simple.
What lessons do you think we can learn from the pandemic when it comes to healthcare or climate change, and how that can be implemented going forward?
I think one of the biggest things that we can learn from the pandemic is that, not everybody is treated equally in our society, and that we're not all in this together, unfortunately. We're not all in the same boat. As much as I would love to say the sentiment of, we're all in the same boat, we're all in this together, we can get through this, I know that that's not the case. There are people out there on life rafts, there are people out there drowning, and there are people out there on their luxury yachts. And what we need to learn is that the people on their luxury yachts are not paying their fair share, and that needs to be addressed. We need to ensure that rather than making cuts to healthcare, rather than making cuts to education, rather than not taking action against the climate, and rather than blaming the working class for the climate issues and for climate change, when we know it's the top polluters that are making these problems happen. So that's what we need to do. We need to really focus on where we're focusing our efforts. Because if we're continuing to tax the middle class, the lower class, if we're continuing to, place all of the burden on the middle working class, we're not going to get anywhere. We're not going to address these issues, and we're unfortunately going to keep going down the same path. Maybe with like more recycling bins out, which is great. I'm all for your environment, understanding your environmental impact and understanding the way that you impact the environment. But we also need to understand that, turning your lights off for 20 minutes, for Earth hour, or turning off your lights for an hour for Earth hour isn't necessarily the best way to combat the climate crisis. Sure, it helps and it's a statement, but really what we need to do is we need to be taxing the ultra wealthy. We need to be making the ultra corporations that are contributing to the massive amounts of carbon output pay their fair share. And we need to ensure that we are not giving breaks to these big corporations that are creating so much carbon emission. We need to make sure that we are ensuring that they are paying their fair share for the carbon that they emit, for the pollution that they're emitting, and for the issues that they're causing our society. So that is first and foremost what we need to do. There are a lot of things that we can learn from this pandemic, but I think the biggest thing is that we need to learn that we need to work together. And working together means that we need to stop placing all of the burden on the middle and working class. And we need to start placing our burden on the folks that can actually carry that. So we need to really focus on equity and equality.
You talked about the cuts to services to the middle class and the tax burden on them. Many people argue that we can't take serious actions against climate change because it will have an impact on middle class, it will have impact on jobs. So what is your response to that argument?
Yeah, I think jobs is a really important thing that we need to talk about right now. And something that the NDP has definitely taken into consideration. We've actually created a plan to create over 1 million new good jobs in all communities and rebuild local economies with meaningful family sustaining work in every part of the country and transitioning to make these changes to succeed in a low carbon future. So we need to include jobs building green infrastructure in communities across the country. We need to consider cross training workers. So, people that are working in the oil sands, people that are working in the oil and gas industry need to be cross trained to work in green energy jobs and green energy sector. We can't just leave people behind. So, we need to work together with labor, with employers, and with the provinces and territories to find solutions for workers and communities. This includes providing dedicated employment support, combining access to expanded EI benefits, retraining, and job placement services, ensuring companies retain and redeploy their workers when in transition, and ensuring that workers nearing retirement have the retirement security they have worked their whole lives for without penalties to their pensions if they retire early. Like we need to take that into consideration for sure. So that is a great question. I appreciate that.
Federal deficit is expected to be 400 billion, and the national debt is going to be more than $1 trillion. So that is another argument that to spend money on social programs and other things. So what is the NDP plan to reduce national debt and the deficit?
Yeah, so I actually mentioned this in the CARP debate, and I think that it's really important to note because a few people have asked me this, how are we supposed to get all this money, just from taxing the ultra wealthy? And first of all, it's not just from taxing the ultra wealthy. We have a lot of different plans, but in terms of just talking about taxing the ultra wealthy and what that can bring, for example, when our plan was analyzed, it was said that if we were just to tax the families, the ultra wealthy families bringing in more than I believe it was 20 billion or 20 million per like annually, these families, if we were to tax them accordingly and tax them fairly, then we could see coming into our country $5.6 billion. I believe it's either 5.6 or $5.8 billion annually, just from taxing those families. So I know that it doesn't seem like a lot to just tax, the ultra wealthy and tax these ultra wealthy families, but it will bring in a lot of revenue. And we don't need to see cuts to social services because that being said, like our social services are the backbone of our society. People need social services, and we also need to invest in our communities. So sure, maybe having somebody on disability doesn't seem like it's the greatest idea financially, but you're investing into that person while they are going through what they're going through while they can't work, and they're able to sustain themselves in other ways. If you take away those payments, if you take away their livelihood, then how are they supposed to sustain themselves and contribute to our society in the long run? We need to invest in our community. We need to invest in education because the more educated people that we have, the more people that we're going to have entering the workforce, and the more people that we're going to have, working these entry level jobs, working jobs in childcare, education, in the healthcare system, places where we need more people working. So if we have more educated people, if we're investing in education, if we're investing in healthcare, if we're investing in mental health care, we're in turn investing in the people, and the people will bring our economy forward. So yes, I understand that there's a deficit. I understand that we need to take that into consideration, and we do need to take that seriously, but we also need to take seriously that investing in people and investing in the life and livelihood of people will in turn bring up the economy, because the more people that are able to contribute to society and live happy lives and be able to afford their day-to-day life can then in turn spend more money and contribute to our society, and also work jobs that are needed to contribute to our society and keep things going. So that's something that we need to look at, invest in the people because it will bring us forward.
You are the youngest candidate. You do not have any previous experience in public service or public life. So what are you bringing to the table that other candidates are not?
Degree in political science and I have a degree in criminology. I've done a lot of work in the community with both of those degrees. I have done a lot of community service work. I have been involved in the community. I've also worked a lot of customer service and retail jobs where I have to work with the people. I've worked at the YMCA of Simcoe, Muskoka. I've been involved in social programming. I've been involved in helping folks that need help. I am a person. I'm a member of this community first and foremost. I care about the people. I care about this community. I've been involved. I will continue to be involved. And yes, I'm young. Sure, I may not have the experience on paper that folks are looking for, but I do have the drive. I have the ambition, and I do have experience. I have my educational experience. I have my work background. I have my experience within the community. And also, I would like to note that Angelique Belcourt, who ran for Simcoe North in 2019, was also 24 years old, was also in her master's, and also had all of the same credentials that I did. And she did an amazing job. She changed so many hearts and minds. She kicked butt. And, unfortunately, she didn't win because it is a very conservative stronghold there. But she did make some change. She did make some progress, and she did break down some barriers so that the Simcoe North candidate this time around has been having a great time as well. And she's been changing even more hearts and minds. So that's something that needs to be considered too. I'm not going to stop, regardless of whether I win or lose. I'm not going to give up. My plan is that I'm going to work for the people. That is my goal. That is my plan. Like I said, I'm a master's student. I'm studying food insecurity and poverty in our community. So regardless, I want to work for our community. I want to work for the people, and I want to keep doing that. But I think that it's time that we make some change. I think that it's time that we bring young people into politics. I think it's time that we break down these barriers, because the thing is, politics is for everybody. Politics is something that young people should be involved in, because this is our future. And young, capable women and people that aren't necessarily um, men in suits need to be able to have a platform and need to be able to have their voices heard, because we are just as capable. We are just as strong. We are just as educated, and we know what we're talking about, and that's what's important. It's important to have somebody that knows the community, that knows what they're talking about, that is educated but also willing to learn. I know that I don't know everything. I know that I don't have all the answers, but I'm willing to listen. I'm willing to learn. That's why I've been going out and talking to people as much as I can, and that's why I've been trying to get myself out there in the community so that people can talk to me and I can learn more and I can do better every day, because that's my goal. I know that I don't have all the answers, but I want to help as best as I can. So that's why I'm doing this. I think in closing, I just want to remind folks that we do have options, we do have choices. Your vote does matter. You don't need to consider voting strategically just to get by. That's actually hurting our democracy. We do need to have our voices heard and have our votes heard. So vote for who you want to vote for. Vote with passion, and instead of using violence, like I spoke about in the beginning here, and defacing signs and harming signs because it's illegal, and also disrespectful, use your vote to cast your opinion and to talk about these issues. And if you have any questions for me or for any of the other candidates, I know that we're more than happy to answer those questions. I'm constantly answering emails on my Facebook page, on my Instagram. So folks can contact me anytime that they need to through my social media, and I'm more than happy to chat.
That's all I have. Thank you so much, Aleesha, for your time, and I wish you all the best with your campaign. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate your time, and I'm happy that we had this chance to connect.